The last figure I want to take is a little bit later. We're now getting into the 18th century, early 19th century, and we want to look at the figure of Chong Da-san or Chong Yak-yong. Chong Yak-yong was a government official, scholar of what is called the Practical Learning School. The Practical Learning School was a movement within Chosŏn Confucianism to stop debating metaphysics and to start looking at practical solutions to policy. Chong Yak-yong's teacher, a man by the name of Ik, is actually said to be the founder of the Shidduch school, and Ik was quite disturbed by the fact that people were still debating how many angels can dance on the head of a pin, and this is not what Confucians should be doing. What Confucians should be doing is looking for practical solutions to problems. Chong Da-san or Chong Yak-yong studied with Ik, and his approach then was really to look at what Confucian theory can do in terms of solving social problems. He was known because of the time that he spent on a hill called Tasan. He was also known as Chong Tasan, Tea Mountain. Chong Da-san is, among the various Confucian scholars of the Chosŏn period, one of the most independent and most creative minds that you will run across. He himself was not very satisfied with orthodoxy. He didn't think that the Confucian classics had to be interpreted according to the Jushi school. He himself rejected academy education in favor of private education, and he researched the six classics, 4 books by himself, without using any commentary to it. Okay, what happened to the rest of Chong Da-san? All right. Okay, we're missing the last pages. Anyway, we'll just use the PowerPoint. As a member then of Practical Learning School, again, he didn't really care for the metaphysical things and so forth. He himself, again, is claimed, whether this is true or not, we don't know, that he was in the lineage of the Yongnam-pa of Itaege, and therefore maintained at least the semblance of this. Chong Yak-yong, of course, is also important because he was one of the earliest Confucians to be influenced by Western studies, that is, by the Jesuits in China, who had written various texts. And when he had traveled in the embassy to China, Chong Yak-yong actually encountered Westerners, one of the earliest people to meet Westerners. And he was very much taken by Matteo Ricci, Father Matteo Ricci's book called the Tianshi Shuri, which is actually a discussion of how one in China should refer to God. What is the true meaning of the notion of Tianshi, literally the master of heaven, or the true meaning of the notion of master of heaven, or Lord of heaven. And Matteo Ricci had written this book primarily as a guide to other missionaries in regard to how foreign European missionaries should refer to God within Chinese. And he scoured all the classical texts, found the equivalent of what he thought, in fact, should be the name for God. So he said Tianshi. There's a problem with that because in Taoism, Tianshi means ritual master. But in Ricci's time, Tianshi actually should be the Lord of Heaven or the Master of Heaven. This book was very, very well written, and I've read it both in Chinese and in translation, and it really reads sort of like a commentary on the Confucian canon. Matteo Ricci really mastered all the Confucian canon. He also translated the Chinese Confucian canon into Latin, and those are stored in Rome right now, so you can get a Latin translation of the Book of Analects, the Book of Filial Piety, and so on and so forth. But Chong Yak-yong encountered his readings and actually were very intrigued with him. One of the most important things that he developed because of his encounter with Western notions of God or Western notions was that Chong Yak-yong went back to look at Confucian texts, and he actually felt that within the Confucian text there was evidence to indicate that heaven, the power that regulates the universe or is the basis for all of our endowments, all of our circumstances, is personal, very unusual. That is, that there is a personality and there is a personal response mechanism within heaven. And if this isn't theism, I don't know what it is. It's the closest thing to theism. So in commenting on what the Confucians meant by heaven, he actually says, heaven can punish you. Heaven can reward you. And that's what that sounds like is Catholic notions that God rewards and God punishes. Okay? and that therefore ordinary individuals can in fact be instructed in what is right and wrong by having a right relationship with heaven. So heaven can instruct you, heaven can lead you, heaven can give you rewards for your virtue and punish you for your sins. And this actually looks very much like a typical Christian or Roman Catholic notion of what God is. Chong Yak-yong, of course, his family was very much involved in the politics of the time. Chong Yak-yong's brother-in-law, his son-in-law, actually is it Jung Sagyup? He wrote the Silk Letter. Huang, yeah. His own daughter's husband had written this long letter during a period of persecution of Roman Catholics, because many of his family were Roman Catholic, in which he actually called upon the princes, he called upon the papacy to bring in troops to save Catholics within it. So Chong Yak-yong actually was there by association accused of being a Catholic. I don't think, even though Don Baker and I disagree on this, I don't think that Chong Yak-yong was actually baptized or a Catholic. Catholics say that he was baptized. I don't think there is. Catholics say that he was a converted Catholic. I don't really see it in his writings. But he did have a very Catholic-like interpretation of the Confucian classics and so forth. Chong Yak-yong also was, because of his association with the newly converted Catholics, was also in and out of office. He happened to belong to the Namin faction, which is the southern faction, and depending upon who was king at the time or who was regent at the time, the Namin faction often was in and out of office all the time. So Chong Yak-yong often didn't stay in government, and he was, again, also exiled several different times, usually because of his association with Westerners or association with Catholics. He, in fact, published a great deal, and Chong Da-san's writings, again, primarily deal with government policy and how government policy should, in fact, work. He was especially interested in law, and I've always suspected that Chong Yak-yong had actually had access to some sort of published notion of Western law. We know that Matteo Ricci, Adam Schall, and other Jesuits living in China did, in fact, try to instruct the Chinese on notions of Roman law. So there may, in fact, have been access to notion of what law is about and so forth. And Chong Yak-yong's own published works are really about that. He is coming late within the Chosŏn period, almost at the end of the dynasty, and he's probably the most innovative. That is, that he bypassed the Juche orthodoxy in order to find out his own meaning. The circumstance under which he needed to find meaning, though, of course, was heavily Western. So of all the late Confucian scholars, he's the one who is most affected by Western ideas and contact with the West, and helps to make a transition into the modern period. Okay? Got it? Luz comes out, and I know I've got to finish it up, so okay. All right. And again, I would like to give you some information. Most of that, if you just type in any of these names, Chong Da-jun and so forth, you should be able to find lots and lots of material online about these people. So, okay.